Moving on to the next point, create brand consistency. Now this again, continuing with the last point, what I was talking about is that you need to be on, it's okay if you're on a limited number of channels, but you do your best. Along with doing your best, it's very important that there is a synergy between your brands. Right? If the synergy is lacking, it creates confusion in the mind of the consumer. So someone who's on Facebook, someone who's on Twitter, someone who's on Instagram, and they see your brand and online. So they see your brand, be it on any platform, they should have some connecting points to create that whole picture about you. It can't be that there is a different color and there's a different communication on one platform. So for example, Facebook is all that the whole color is yellow that you put in. On Twitter, whatever. So when I'm talking about color, it's about your cover page. That is there. For example, right now on Facebook, it's the same with Twitter and Instagram. So it can't be that you're using different colors. So it's yellow on Facebook, green on Twitter, and blue on Instagram, with different communication, different logos. It all creates a very, very bad disconnect. So ideally, to start off or to create that synergy, number one, you have to understand, if you don't have a brand manual or a brand guideline, you have to be very clear of what your business is all about. What does your business do? Yeah, I'm sure you know what your business does, but what is the messaging or that you want to put across? So what does your brand stands for? What does your brand represent? All this comes, and how could you put this across? It could be the communication that you put across, right? So even with the communication, it's what is the color? What is the predominant colors that you use, right? So if I tell you brands, you can recollect them by the colors that I would say. For example, a McDonald's would have a specific color, right? Or you would think of red and yellow. And ICICI Bank would be red. HDFC would be blue. So colors play a very important role, as we know. Fonts and images that you use. So everything should be consistent, should be ideally similar on all platforms. So as I was saying, identify your brand look and feel. So that once you're clear what should be your brand look and feel. For example, it's more of I told you about colors. It could also be about shape. So it's a lot of circles. It's a lot of squares. So it's the same design that you should carry. When I say same design, I'm not at all saying the layout. What I'm talking about is the look and feel, the colors or the shapes that you use on your designs, right? So it should be across. It should be very similar. The communication also, as I was talking about. So it has to be consistent across all platforms. Why do you do that? Again, as I was telling you, streamlining branding will really help your consumers, your followers, to connect the dots between you and your business, because otherwise it will just leave them in confusion. And why is it leaving them in confusion? Because even they would come to realize the brand itself is so confused. So ideally, be very clear of your branding, communication, colors, fonts, and all of those. So here I've given you examples of one single example of KFC. So one, you can see their YouTube page on the left. On the top right, it's their website, and down bottom is their Facebook page. So if you realize there are two colors that they're playing, two or three colors that they're playing the most with. That is red and black. So KFC is all about. So when you recollect KFC, it's all about red, right? KFC, the logo itself is in red. So they predominantly try to play a lot with the red. Of lately, they are doing a lot of black too. That's because they want to give it that premium appeal. So that is why the black. And they are currently they're promoting this hot and saucy chicken. So you can see that as the cover page on the Facebook page, as well as the video on YouTube. It's about the hot and saucy chicken. So here you can see in this case of KFC, they have tried to create that synergy as much as possible. So at the same time, it shouldn't be the replica, because you have to, these are all different platforms with different characters and different personalities. So even what I always say is even platforms have their own character and personality. So based on their character and personality, ideally customize your communication or your brand colors, but yeah, don't mess much with the fonts. So colors, also brand colors, but it doesn't mean that you use a completely off color. For example, you won't see a green out here in KFC, or you won't see a blue, right? So there's a consistency that you have to keep across. Your logo, very important, same look, same feel everywhere on all channels, right? It leads us to the next point, make it personal. So again, when we say make it personal, why? It's a social media channel, right? It's public. It's very much public. Why do we say that make it personal? Though the channel is personal, as we realize, we try to understand a target audience, a target group, or a target person. So we discussed about the persona that a user should have. We should create a persona. A brand should create a persona so that they are very clear who they are talking to. So once you're very clear who you're talking to, you can create very meaningful relationships with them, because you know the person you're talking to, so you know what will interest that person. At the same time, it can this whole conversation, this whole engagement can also help you understand what are their needs, what do they want, right? So it's important that you ask questions, because it's the only people that you connect on a personal level you would ask questions. Like, for example, I'm not talking about small talk like how you're doing, or so nice weather, yeah, but more clear. So what do you think about this specific movie, for example? Or what is your view on a weekend destination? What kind of destination would you go to? So all this helps you understand that what are their likes, dislikes, and what interests them more. On that basis, again, which will again help you to put in your content based on all those aspects. So finding stats, research, and insight, as I told you, try to understand the followers of people who like the product that you're offering or consume the product that you're offering. What do they normally do? As much stats as possible. There are a lot of resources available online. So if you can do all that research, you can clearly put across your posts or tweets or whatever social media channel. You can build that communication based on that. Again, based on all this insight that you've gathered, you can share relevant tips. For example, as I was talking earlier, so for example, it's about most of the people who is following your page are interested in going out on weekends, maybe to nearby places. So for example, you're in Bombay or you're in Delhi. So what are the nearby weekend destinations? You can run a whole content bucket based on that, helping them discover new places, new weekend destinations, weekend getaways that they could go to. Same way, it could be about clothing, right? It could be a fashion and lifestyle. If there are a lot of female audience on your particular page, though you might be a GEC, that is a general entertainment channel. So you are a TV channel which is talking about serials or soaps, but out there are women. So how can you keep them interested? You could give tips and tricks on how to dress up well. What do you wear to that weekend party that you're planning to? So it is very important. First up, as I told you, I was very clear that there are women out there and they like to go out on weekend. How did I get all this information? This information I got through all the research that I've been doing. So on basis of that, give them that kind of tips and advice. It feels like for them, as I'm talking to your followers, it should feel like a friend is talking to them, not a brand. Social media, that's one of the most important aspect that you have to keep in mind. It's not a brand which is going on blabbering. It is a person. It should feel like it's a person talking to you. That's why this whole aspect of keep it personal. So basis of all the understanding and research, you can really talk to them like you would talk to your best friend or your brother or sister. Be visually appealing. Now again, it's a very obvious thing that I'm talking here, be visually appealing, but it's again not that simple. It is, in today's time, the content that we get interested in, the first thing that we notice is the visuals. I know you would say that you read a post, you try to understand what it is, but the first thing, so this goes on the whole IDA principle, that is attention, interest, desire and action. So to get that attention, the visuals play a very important role. Platforms like Pinterest and Instagram is based just on that. We all have Instagram on our phones, or we know about Pinterest, where it's just photos, right? So it's not much about what's written, it's about what is the image like. So all your social media channels, the best way to create maximum impact in terms of response or engagement is to use visual elements. So even if you're putting a post, don't just make it a text, so even in your content calendar or whatever you do, use visuals. You might need a good designer for that, or there are a lot of free solutions today, be it Pixlr, be it Canva, where you can create your own visuals. So use it to your best, so that all posts that you do on social media has the right kind of engagement and pull to it. So as I was saying, it's very clear and obvious. I put in a stats there that a tweet can improve shares by 200% if there's a visual attached to it. So Twitter earlier is like you thought, people just used to put tweets or text, and visual was not an important aspect that people used to believe. But today, that's what it's proven, that it gets a significant, your engagement or response to the tweet that you put gets significant jump if you have a visual along with it. So here you can see some examples of Coke or Oreo. Oreo is a very interesting page. Do go through their Facebook page. They do some very interesting content. And why do I say it's very interesting? Because the kind of visuals that they provide. So if you see, most of their posts, they use their own product. That's their Oreo biscuits, right? So they do it in such an interesting manner with their products. Here you can see a percentage or a tongue sticking out. So with their products itself, they kind of tweak their products with, they have a pretty good designer who tweaks their products and makes it, talk. Like for example, a whole story or some element that comes out with it. So do check out the Oreo Facebook page. You would find very interesting visual content. Also, as I was saying earlier, Zomato, even they do some really brilliant visuals. So there you can see a Facebook cover page created by this guy. So very interesting visuals. So it catches your attention, right? So even in this page, that Facebook cover page really catches your attention because he's just done something very interesting out there, and the copy connects with the visual. Even that is important. The kind of content that you put has to connect with the visual that you put in, otherwise it won't make sense. So he's written maybe in Facebook, I can breathe underwater, and he's shown it in his visuals in his own style. Very interesting. About that, out there on Coke, it's very minimal, but it does its job. The last point, that is diversify your content. So what do you mean by diversifying your content? Again, I mentioned this earlier, but it is very important that you just don't pick up content from across the web and just post it on your social media platforms. You need to build, give or provide some value to your followers, where the reason is you want them to come back, right? You want them to engage with you. So build value. So that is, you have to give content that can build that value. So also, as I was saying, be personal, but yes, you have to in the end promote your brand too, but you have to find this right balance between professional and personal. So even when you're talking about your brand, it need not be a very serious tone, or you just picked up the billboard communication that you have and just slapped it on your social media page. Give a twist to it. Remember the tonality that you were following based on the persona that you developed, created. So remember that tonality, because you're still speaking to Rohan. So that billboard might not be speaking to Rohan. So change it, give it that twist so that it all falls into place. So add flavor to your social media post, because people don't want to read boring content, right? People don't want to see the same post everywhere. So for example, it's on Independence Day, Happy Independence Day. Yes, it would get some response, but it doesn't make your brand stand out. It doesn't make people feel that you're giving something extra, or you're giving something different, or you have an interesting take on things, right? So your thoughts, what is your view on things? So be it on Independence Day, it's been so many years we are independent, and how do we feel right now after independence with all that's going about in the country? Ideally keep it positive as much as possible. Avoid the negative tonality until and unless it's very much needed and you want to spark off a debate or a conversation. So as a brand, it's kind of a commitment that you have if you're on social media, that you have to give them interesting content. You have to give them what will entertain them, what will keep them excited, what will make them feel content that would make them feel like it's adding value. They could use that content, they could pick up and take it, like maybe they are meeting up with their friends. So for example, Rohan is catching up with your friends. He can show off or flaunt the knowledge that he has. And maybe this particular page that you have where you've made Rohan has your persona, he can pick up all the information or all the news or all the content that you have, that you've been providing. He can pick those up and show it or flaunt it with his friend. So no follower of yours want content to be thrown at them, want to be considered as that they are just sitting there to read your post, however uninteresting or boring it is. The question is, how do you diversify your content? So some pointers that I've put across here. It's like, so even if it's a link, as I was telling you, so maybe you're picking up a link, or you're showing an interesting article which has come on maybe Scoop Whoop, or that's what the trend nowadays. So Scoop Whoop or Story Pick or BuzzFeed, put your own take on it. It shouldn't be that you're putting up the link and just that's about it. So yes, it might get shared because the content is the content or the link is good, but what is your packaging over it, or how does it connect with your product or your offering, or it's your page or your brand that has added some value to it. Infographics, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's very important. So if there's certain informative or something educative or something interesting that you have to share and it's a lot of content, ideally it would be great to make it infographic and not just text. So you see on the right side where it says top 10 greenest countries. So there are graphs and what are the rankings. So it could be all shown in a maybe Excel sheet format or a graph format, but it won't be that interesting. So that's why an infographic. It makes it all the more interesting. So whenever you put up content, as I was telling you, you could put your own take to it, or put your own feedback to it. Maybe ask a question. It's very important, ideally, as much as possible on your post you can ask a question, because then the chances are more that people would comment, and they would comment and answer or response to your question. So yes, we have covered 8 important points for an idiot-proof social media strategy. There are a lot more things, but what I've tried to cover here are the most important points that you have to keep in mind if you have to have a strong social media strategy. So don't start a page, or don't create a page or a platform until and unless you're very sure what are you going to put onto it, because an empty page or a page that is not consistent can mar your brand in a big manner. Because today any brand, anyone hears a product or offering or a brand, they Google it, and social media channels come right up in the search. If they click on it and they don't see much content, they don't see nothing interesting happening there, it just spoils the whole feel of the brand, or it leaves a very bad impression. So yes, I hope this session has been helpful. That's about it. Thank you, and we could catch again. Bye bye.